Number one, I'm sorry my room is so boring. I'm a huge maximalist, so this makes me very sad, but I literally just moved in yesterday. So, shit like that takes a little bit of time, and I'm mostly worried about decorating my shop room at the moment. So, yeah, I have a question. Why do people hate people who are different? I feel like the whole world is different people, yet people tend to hate them for being different. In my experience with being different, I mostly have seen it through my tattoos and piercings. A couple other things, like I definitely am a bit of an odd human being, so definitely that as well, but I would say mostly my tattoos and piercings. I also want to say really quickly in this video that I am very much aware of all of my privileges. I'm white, I have been told I'm pretty, I have received an education, I present as the birth that I was assigned, I present as the gender that I was assigned at birth. All those privileges, so I do not take those for granted, and this video is not to undermine any of my privileges. And then the other thing that I want to clarify really quickly is that I'm also very aware that I am not heavily modified. I think a lot of people think that I am because I might have some more tattoos or piercings than the average person, but I really am not modified much at all. But I did want to touch on my own personal experience with being modified, especially a modified woman. I feel like being modified as a woman is a whole different ball game over being a modified man. I tend to get comments surrounding the idea that I'm a freak, quote unquote, and when I say freak, I don't mean like what you'd be called in middle school because you fucking colored your picture weird. I mean literally to the point that people assume how I am in bed, which is crazy. And most of these comments are from strangers, in particular men. Are we surprised? No. The first tattooed woman that we have preserved is a mummy found in Egypt. She is known as the Galabian woman around 3300 BC. She has S-shaped markings on the top of her arm, which is thought to either be a clave or a baton. These markings most likely represented status, either marital or even social status, because both of those representations of what they think that they are were something usually higher in status. Fast forward a couple thousand years, and women were actually being put in the circus for having tattoos. Not only were they put in the circus, but they were in something called the freak show, which is genuinely just pretty similar to a circus, just more heavily circled around human beings who they thought were a freak show. That's so messed up. What the hell? One woman in particular was named Maud Wagner. She actually ran away from her home and joined the circus. She later on met a man named Gus Wagner, who was a heavily modified, in the way of heavily tattooed, I guess I'll say, man who was also a tattoo artist, and he ended up teaching her many tattoo practices, and she ended up becoming, quote unquote, USA's first woman to master hand poke tattoos, which I also want to clarify here that I don't know how valid that is, because I do think that it is erasing native women who obviously the native people created hand poke tattoos, like the traditional hand poke tattoos, so I would definitely say that they were the masters of said craft. This is just what I found on the internet when I was researching, but I do think that that's a very whitewashed sentence right there. Fast forward to the 1960s, and women were now just allowed to get tattoos without written consent from their husbands. So around the 1960s and shortly after, tattoos were seen, especially for women, as an act of rebellion, especially against the patriarchy, and an act of free will. Pretty much the best way of preservation is in glaciers. The oldest case of stretched earlobes that has been found is also from a glacier in Australia, to be exact, and it was dated to about 5,000 years ago. Crazy. Insane. Stretched earlobes often represented wisdom, status, and even the relationship to their gods. The Masai in Kenya and the Fulani in West Africa saw ear weights in particular as a sign of beauty and or womanhood. Ear weights are even something that's used in modern day stretching and body mods. It's just a way to literally simply weigh down the earlobe to either embellish or even help with the process of stretching, and it is very safe. So the fact that it's such an old and known practice is just incredibly beautiful. The Dayak people of Borneo believed that the longer the earlobe, the higher the connection to the gods. The septum piercing dates all the way back to the Aztec, Mayan, and even Native American people. Oftentimes, the septum was embellished with jade, gold, bone, tusks. Oftentimes, they were stretched as well. In order to fit certain things, especially a bone or a tusk, into the septum, they had to be stretched. The careful and painful procedure of stretching the septum is next level, especially to the size where a bone would fit into it. I currently have a 10 gauge septum. I have gone all the way to a 6 gauge, I believe, but ended up downsizing back down. The pain, though, to even get it to a bone size is astronomical to me. Oftentimes bones were used because it tended to blur the line between beast and man, making them look much more fierce in battle. The Mercy and Surma women of Ethiopia would pierce their lip, usually in the lower labret area, and then stretch it using a plate, and this showed womanhood and beauty to them. Fast forward to 1883 in the United States, the BIA, known as the Bureau of Indian Affairs, ended up banning cultural practices, banning them as evil. This banned the Sundance in particular, which is a very, very prominent and cultural dance that was done by Native Americans, which in act ended up banning many cultural piercings. And then in 1895, Canada also did the same thing, following the footsteps of America, banning the Sundance. It is thought that people have been getting tattooed since the Neolithic period, which dates all the way back to about 10,000 BCE, which is a long-ass time ago. And I know we touched earlier on the oldest tattooed woman preserved, but there is someone who predates her. It was just a man, so it was not relevant to my conversation at the time, but it is relevant now. His body is preserved, and it is believed that he's from 3250 BCE. His name is Otizi, the Iceman. He was found with over 60 tattoos, which even in 2025, over 60 tattoos is quite a goddamn lot of fucking tattoos. That's a lot. The Inuit people are a group of people that I have been very intrigued by their tattoos. I think they're insanely beautiful. One in particular is that they have a V shape tattooed onto their forehead. These are done on women, typically when they have their first period, to show womanhood and beauty. I found a lot of this information on Arctic Search Foundation on Instagram, actually. I absolutely adore their page. I think that everything they stand for is incredibly important, and they're extremely resourceful. After missionaries came into Canada around the 1700s, many cultural practices, including their tattoos, were banned and also deemed as evil. So if you remember when I touched on earlier about the Sundance in America and in Canada being officially outlawed, and therefore taking out their piercings and taking out their tattoos. I think that in older times that tattoos and piercings were seen as evil, as a form of racism, honestly, and I think that back then that's why people hated people who were different. I specifically researched 3 topics as to why I think that people in now's day and age are scared of different people, and specifically modified people, because I do think that back then it was rooted in racism. I still stand on some grounds of that. I think that when it comes to cultural tattoos, the stigma of not liking them does come from racism, and I think that a lot of people like to say, oh, well, I just think it's crazy to tattoo your face, because yes, a lot of cultural tattoos do tend to revolve around the face, but I think you're just rooted in racism and white supremacy, and you just want what is normal. Anyways, in 2025, why are people so scared of people like me? Okay, let's get into it. Why I think my opinion, please. My opinion. 1, religion. One verse in particular is Leviticus 19:28. You shall not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead, nor tattoo any marks on you. I am the Lord. A lot of ideas of religion and tattoos is that tattoos were originally made for paganism and idolatry, which I think is a very broad statement, because yes, some tattoos were done for their gods. Some did it because they thought it was beautiful. I mean, I just think that that's a really broad and way too broad of a statement to say for sure. And then the other thing that has to do with religion is modesty. Some people tend to think that tattoos are just not super modest, which I think is funny, because I think that a lot of people, when they think modest, they tend to think cleavage and they tend to think booty shorts, but actually modesty isn't just that. It has to do with a lot of the way you hold yourself, the way you speak. I'm sitting very weird, so I apologize for having to look at that. But number 2 that I think people are scared in the modern day of modified people is the gangster stigma. This one is rooted in true facts, but the stigma itself is just dumb. So dumb. In the early 20th century, tattoos were very popular for punks, gangs, and bikers to kind of signify where they were in said biker gang, where they were in said punk culture, and where they were in said gang in general, street gang or whatever. One that's very popular in America is the teardrop tattoo near the eye, which represents either murder or, interestingly enough, the loss of a loved one. And in the Mexican mafia, for example, the number 13 is also a very common tattoo. There are many other tattoos for gangs. There's just so many. And then the third and final reason that I think that people stigmatize body modifications, tattoos, and piercings in particular is the permanence of them and the fact that they don't fit into a box. So this is kind of like a dual one, so I guess this is kind of like number 3 and 4. But I'll start off with the permanence of it. I think that when a lot of people see tattoos in particular, I get this with piercings as well, because the scars that piercings leave behind, but more or less with tattoos is that people immediately go for, you're going to have that for your whole life. Yeah, I know. Some are regrettable in that aspect, but like, yeah, that's kind of like, yeah. So I think that really scares people. Fear of commitment, for sure. There's definitely nothing wrong with that. There's definitely nothing wrong with being scared of commitment. There's definitely nothing wrong with being scared of the fact that you are going to have something on your body for the rest of your life, whether that be a scar from a piercing. I have many scars from piercings. I have makeup on right now, obviously, but if I didn't, you would very clearly see at least like 7 scars on my face, which is like kind of sucks, but like it's also something you know going into it. So I think it's like super valid and super okay to be scared of said permanence for yourself, but I think when you push said fear onto someone else, that's when it's no longer valid. And then the dual part of that idea, and or number 4, is the idea of normalcy. Tattoos are seen as something relatively normal now, along with piercings, but on a still, I would say, a very low scale. I would say a little nose stud and a little quote that your grandma told you on your wrist are like seen as very normal. The more you get, the less normal you are. We are told every single day what's normal, what's beautiful, what's right and correct for us to do. And I think that a lot of people do intentionally or unintentionally adopt said ideology. That's pretty much what I had for notes. I really love these style of videos, like research style videos. I just wanted to put like a little bit of a spin on it and have a little bit of my own experience with said topic as well. I am a body piercer as well, and I have been in and out of the body mods industry for about 3 years now. If I could give any outro to this video, which I guess I don't really know how to outro this video, is stay creative, stay different. There is no goddamn boxed. Stay normal. There is no normal anyways. Stay however the fuck you want, or change however the fuck you want. Because you can do that now. We have the free will to do so. I loved making this video. I had so much fun with it. I want to keep creating and researching. And I don't really see a point of stopping what I love, I guess. So don't stop what you love, I guess. Much love and peace, y'all.